Hey there, John Shorby here from ReallyEasyGuitarLessons.com. I've been teaching guitar for almost 15 years now, primarily to what I call adult hobbyist beginner guitar players. These are guys and girls that just want to play guitar for their own enjoyment. They're not necessarily looking to become high-level virtuosos or join a band, take this thing to the highest levels. They just want to play for their own enjoyment and their own fulfillment. And while there are many great drills and exercises that could warp speed a beginner guitar player's progress, I know that for most beginners of this type, they're mostly interested in learning songs and recognizable pieces of music that they recognize and that other people that they might play for will recognize. And so while we do sprinkle in some basic, simple, very easy to do skill building drills and exercises with these types of students that are hyper-focused on song learning, I try to show them how to squeeze more juice out of learning songs so they're not just learning how to play the thing they want to play, but they're learning how to build skill simultaneously. So in this video lesson, we're going to walk you through a journey where each song you learn is not just a new tune in your repertoire, but something that moves the needle forward in your overall guitar playing progress. We're going to dive into some different things like how to choose the right songs, how to push yourself to do better, cool things like transposing songs, learning things by ear, and some creative applications where you could take some songs that you're learning and create your own little things based off of the songs that you're learning. So whether you are a brand new player or you've got some experience, this video will have a bunch of different tips and insights that will help you take your game to a higher level by doing the thing that we all love to do, which is learning songs. Let's jump in. Real quick, you do not need a guitar on you to get value out of this video lesson. I'm not really going to demonstrate anything. It's more higher level lecture type material. Tip number one, choose the right songs. I always say to my beginner guitar players that you need to pick songs that mean something to you. If it's a song that you've loved your entire life and you really think it's cool and you really want to play it, it's worth learning because that increases the probability that you pick your guitar up and you do something with it, right? So working on things that are meaningful to you is extremely important because it just creates more consistency and more enjoyment and fulfillment. If you're learning Mary Had a Little Lamb and you want to play, speed metal, that doesn't really compute, okay? You want to work on things that really matter to you. Also, with more experience, you really want to start looking at choosing songs that challenge you and choosing songs that have techniques that you suck at. Now, I feel like I could do a whole video lesson on appropriate songs to learning specific techniques, but I'm just going to give you a few examples right here of some techniques that are, challenging to learn and some songs that really feature that technique. So for example, if you are interested in getting into finger picking, two songs that I teach a lot and I highly recommend for newer finger pickers are Dust in the Wind by Kansas and Landslide by Fleetwood Mac. If you're on the newer side, they will be challenging. You're not going to get them right away. But when you do get somewhat proficient in them, you really build a very good core baseline of the skill of fingerpicking. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to fingerpick everything, but the core fundamentals of the fingerpicking technique are really baked into the cake of those two songs, Dust in the Wind and Landslide. For my lead guitar player students that are just getting into learning solos, specifically getting into string bending, the two solos that I highly recommend for that are Hotel California and Comfortably Numb. They are full of really cool bends, not just single string bends, but doing, bends where you bend one string and then hold that bend and pick the adjacent string. And there are different types of bends. There's half step, quarter step, full step, step and a half. And those two solos run the gamut of different types of bends that you will see. For students that are just getting into bar chords, the dreaded bar chords, best songs I could recommend for newbie bar chord people are Creep by Radiohead, I'm Yours by Jason Mraz, Hotel California, and Lightning Crashes by Live. So Creep is really great because pretty much the whole thing is just bar chords. The other ones have a bar chord followed by open position chords. So you're not just doing the bar chord, but you're getting practice changing from the bar chord to a common open chord. Again, I feel like I could do a whole video lesson just on this topic, techniques and good songs to use that feature that technique. So if that's something that you'd like to see, please leave me a comment below and let me know. Tip number two, hold yourself to a higher standard. So many students, especially beginners, like to cut corners, right? They like to do shortcuts, they like to get quick wins, and then leave it at that. And they just kind of half-ass everything and never go full bore. I encourage you to aim higher. Now, it's perfectly acceptable to do that, especially on the on the beginner side. You do want to achieve quick wins. You want to be able to just take something that's very simple and get close enough, because that again increases the chances that you keep picking up the guitar and start making some progress. But once you get, some things under your belt and you could do some stuff, I highly encourage you that you hold yourself to a higher standard. Now, you don't have to become a virtuoso. You don't have to master everything and be able to play everything that you learn flawlessly and without, maximum energy output, right? Not everything has to be that, but I think some things should be that. You should find it in yourself to demand more for yourself and expect to be better than you are. Now, with that comes two realizations. One, things are going to take longer than you expect. If you hold yourself to a higher standard and you want to play things with more accuracy and more fluidity, guess what? It's going to take longer to achieve that. That's okay. Things take as long as they take. The more you get preoccupied with when do I get to be able to do this, you're just going to set yourself up for frustration and disappointment, right? You need to live in the moment and enjoy the process, because guess what? After you achieve the goal, you're just going to go, now what? And now what? And now what? There is no end to all the things that you could learn, all right? So you have to learn how to enjoy the process and realize that it takes time. And with that, I highly recommend you just slow everything down, right? Slow everything down. Everybody wants to play faster. Everybody wants to learn the thing right now. We all want it right now. You need to learn how to slow everything down, okay? So that means when you're learning songs, don't try to play to album speed right away, okay? Slow it down to whatever level you are at. Focus on being accurate over being fast. The more you focus on accuracy, I guarantee you speed will come. But when you rush through everything and you make a lot of mistakes, that is how you program bad habits into your playing. Trust me from experience, I know what I'm talking about, right? I did it myself. I wanted it to do it now. When I learned how to slow things down and because guitar is a complex instrument. This is not, this is not simple. This is not, something that's like anybody can do it the first time they pick it up. It does have some complexity to it, but the way you push through that complexity and make things really easy is by slowing it down. Tip number 3, take things to the next level. So this is kind of piggybacking off the last tip. So many times I get students that are stuck, right? They feel like they're stuck in a rut with their playing. And you come to find that the way they learn songs is they just learn the simplest version of the song. Now, I'm guilty of this. I teach what I call really easy versions of songs, right? Really easy strummy versions. Because any song can be made into simple chords, simple strumming, just so that you're getting, some reps in on recognizable music, okay? Perfectly acceptable. I don't want to sound like that's a bad approach. It is a good approach. But if that's the only thing that you do, if you only tackle the easiest possible version of a song, well, no wonder you're going to feel like you're stuck, because you're not pushing yourself further. You need to take things to a higher level. So if you find yourself in that situation where you're always taking the really easy approach, I recommend learning things with more note-for-note accuracy, as opposed to breaking everything down to basic chords, basic chord progressions, easy strumming patterns that could be applied over basically any song. I would recommend that you look at the recorded version and you try to match what is on the recording as close as you possibly can. Now, you can drive yourself crazy trying to get 100% accurate, because you're probably not going to get 100% accurate, but the attempt of trying to get close to what you hear, that builds so many useful skills. It builds your ear skills, builds your technique, your listening, overall musicianship. Trying to get as close to recording is one of the most useful things that you could do to build your overall musicianship. And then you could look at song learning as levels of a video game. Level 1 being you're able to play the song with no accompaniment whatsoever. It's just you playing the guitar part by yourself to your own internal time. That's the basic, simplest level of song learning. Level 2 would be playing that along to the recording, right? And you could do that at various speeds. Again, I highly recommend that you take whatever speed the song is and you slow it down to whatever level you're at. Don't try to match them, bring them down to your level. Now, when you're playing along with the recording, That's really great for, one, checking the accuracy of what you're playing to make sure that it jives with what you're hearing on the recording. But the one problem that you run into with that is the recording can mask what you're doing. You may think you're playing everything correctly, but really what you're hearing is just what's happening, what the guitar player is playing on the record. So you can kind of get, a false sense of security thinking that you're doing everything right, but really you're just making a bunch of mistakes and hearing what the guitar player is playing. Which is why you take it to level 3, playing to a backing track that has the guitar removed. I create these for my students, creating them for my YouTube channel, and putting up there for all guitar players to play to. Playing to a backing track where there's no guitar, right, is great because you could do it in your house. You don't need to meet up with anybody or anybody's schedule. You can do it any time of day. It's a lot of fun, but it's challenging because now you are responsible for the guitar part. You can't rely on the recording to tell you whether you're right or wrong. You have to know your stuff, and you have to be able to play it. That will expose all of the weaknesses and all of the flaws in your playing, which you might make you feel uncomfortable, but take it as a good thing because now you know where you need to focus on. The next level would be to do that, but with other musicians. There's a world of difference between playing with the backing track and playing with other musicians. The big difference being unpredictability. When you play to a backing track, it is what it is. It's not going to change the next time you play it. But when you play with other people, based on the mood, based on so many other factors, it could be faster, it could be slower. They could play something a different way that gives you an idea of how you could play it a different way. Playing with other people is far superior to playing to a backing track. It has its own challenges and its own, pros and cons to it, but it's definitely the next level in your development. And then the highest level of song learning would be performing or recording the song somewhat professionally. I don't mean you have to go to a recording studio, spend thousands of dollars. Your home studio is fine. But those two things, again, really shine a light on how well do you know it. You could practice a song a billion times, but then you get put in a situation where you got to perform it in front of people. Now you have this extra layer of nerves, and sometimes you can't hear yourself. It really tests you to see how well you know it because you're put in, into the spotlight and thrust into a situation where you got to sink or swim. And with recording, once you hear what you sound like through like studio speakers or good quality headphones, you record yourself, you listen to it back, that exposes all of your timing flaws, all little string noise things that you might make. You might think you're playing it really, really well until you hear yourself recorded. It's kind of like if you've ever heard what your voice sounds like on a recording. You're like, oh my God, do I sound like that? Yes, it works that way for guitar playing too. You might hear yourself back and go, man, wow, do I sound like that? Again, it might make you uncomfortable, but I say steer into that awkwardness because that is where you're going to understand what you need to focus on and what you need to do. Tip number 4, transpose the songs you learn into different keys, okay? Now, this may not apply to everybody, especially new beginners that I don't necessarily love teaching music theory to brand new players unless that is something that they're interested in. But as you gain experience and as you've got songs under your belt and you can play some music, it's definitely worthwhile to learn the basics of music theory. And one of the fun ways that you can practice all the music theory knowledge is by doing what I just said, is take the songs that you learn and transpose them into a different key. So let's say, for instance, you were playing a song that has got the chords C, F, and G in it. It's in the key of C. Take that, make it be in the key of D. Make it be in the key of B. Make it be in the key of C minor. So take a major sounding song and make it into a minor sounding song. Doing this is one of the best ways to memorize what chords go in what key. It trains your ear to hear what different chord progressions sound like and what the colors and flavors are in these different keys. And if you have any interest in songwriting, this is one of the best ways to bust out of songwriting ruts. For my students that are into songwriting, we often do these exercises where we take a song that they like and we reverse engineer it from a music theory perspective. We get to the bottom of why these chords go together and how we could take that and extract it and make our own thing from it. So by doing this, by transposing and reverse engineering songs that you like, you really understand how music works, and if you have any interest in writing your own songs, that is an extremely valuable skill. And if you don't know anything about music theory and would like to learn more, check out my music theory bootcamp course. I cover all of the basics of music theory specifically for guitar players. Tip number 5, start learning things just by ear. Now listen, guitar tabs are great. I use them literally every day. Video lessons are great, especially if you are on the newer side and you don't know anything about anything, or having a teacher teach you, your finger goes here, you play this string, whatever. All valuable things, to use in your overall tool belt, okay? But I'm telling you that if you start learning things, even just small things, you don't have to learn full songs by ear right away. But if you could learn a melody, right? A simple little melody just by using your ear, right? Just by taking a snippet of a song, one little section, looping it, slowing it down, and trying to figure out how do I play that melody on the guitar using no other resources other than my ear and your brain, okay? The more you do that, I swear to God, you will gain superpowers, right? The value that you get out of that is immeasurable. Again, you don't have to take it to the umpteenth level and be able to learn everything by ear just by listening to it one time. I know people that can do that. They're either blessed with an amazing ear or they've spent years or decades honing their ear and honing that craft. You don't have to necessarily get to that level, but just the act of doing it will make you a better musician and a better guitar player. Again, start small, just 3 to 5 seconds, one little melody, one little riff. Doesn't have to be a full song. Again, slow things down to get to your level. And even when you are using tab or learning from a video, I always recommend that the first thing you do when you're learning a riff, a melody, a solo, whatever, is you get it in your ear first. You listen to it, and you create what I call caveman sounds. You go da 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 ba ba da da whatever the song is. You create the melody and the rhythm in your ear first, because that is the instruction that you want to send to your hand. You don't want to be always thinking, do a downstroke, do an upstroke. This is the 3rd fret. This is the 5th fret. Do a hammer on. Do a pull off. No, just think in music and use musical instruction for your hands to execute. Tip number 6, focus on what you suck at the most. So many times when students are learning songs, they start at the beginning of the song and they work their way through it in chronological order, right? It's not a bad approach when you already know what you're doing, right? But what I highly recommend is you take the hardest parts of the songs, or the parts of the song that you think that you suck at the most, and you start there. Focus on your weaknesses, because you're only going to be as strong as your weakest link. On the same vein as what I just said, you want to practice transitioning between sections of songs. So many times I see students, they will be working on the verse pattern, and then they'll be working on the chorus pattern, and then they work on the verse pattern, and they work on the chorus pattern. They got a verse, they got a chorus. The one thing they don't practice is transitioning from the verse to the chorus. So say you have 8 bars of a verse and 8 bars of a chorus, right? Take the last 2 bars of the verse and the first 2 bars of the chorus and loop that transition, because sometimes that involves changing your pickup switch, hitting a stomp box, or you're changing from maybe playing rhythm guitar to a more lead guitar part. Those transitional sections can really trip a lot of people up. So take what you suck at and focus on it. All right, last tip number 7, creative applications. This is where you can really squeeze the maximum juice and have the most fun with learning songs. The idea is you take the difficult part of a song, or whatever it is you're learning that is tricky, and you create your own piece of music that has that technique in it. I'm not a classical player at all, but I have taught some students that came from the classical piano world. And in classical piano, there are these things called etudes, spelled E-T-U-D-E-S. And the purpose of an etude, how they are, why they exist, is because the composer is taking a difficult technique and composing a short piece of music that focuses just on building that technique. So it's kind of a drill, but it's a drill that is musical. And so we explore this here all the time. I love it. You take a part of a song that is tricky and you use that as a way to be creative, but also practice the technique that is in that song. I'm gonna pick up my guitar and give you an example. All right, so here's a recent example. I was teaching Sweet Home Alabama, and the problem the student had was it was a right hand problem with the palm mutes. So what the technique in that riff is that some of those notes are ringing clean and some of them are palm muted. And the way you approach that is you want to lift your arm like a lever off the string to execute the palm mute. So he had trouble both with the palm mute and also the rhythm, right? He had a hard time getting the rhythm down. It was very choppy, and he couldn't quite get it in his ear. Right, so what we did was we created a small little piece of music that is a lot easier to play than that, but has the same techniques, the palm muting aspect and the rhythm aspect. So we created this little etude, and it sounds like this. And so by creating that etude, it has the same rhythm and structure as the Sweet Home Alabama riff, but it's only played on a couple of strings. It has the technique that my student really needed, which was the palm muting, coming down and coming up, also with some of the pick strokes. And he also had trouble with, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and sliding. So he wanted to incorporate all those little different things into a very short piece of music that he could practice in addition to practicing Sweet Home Alabama. Because when you take the riff of Sweet Home Alabama, right? You're learning that, and you practice it every day, and you're struggling with it every single day. You eventually get to a point where you're getting burned out, and you're getting bored, and you're getting frustrated doing the same thing over and over again. So if you can introduce alternate ways to practice the same concepts, those skills will become transferable, because what you suck at is the palm muting thing, or the sliding thing, or the rhythm. So the more you practice the individual element, it's going to make the riff easier. So there you have it, everybody. There's 7 tips for boosting your skills while learning songs. Remember, guitar playing is a marathon, not a sprint. Slow everything down. Take your time. Learn to enjoy the process. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.